the best things about running your first marathon is that as long as you make it to the finish line, your time will automatically be a PR. And in most cases, since you have a better grasp on that distance, your second time running it will be a PR as well. Beating that time during your third or fourth marathon is decently likely, but chances are there will come a point at which you reach a temporary plateau in improvement or have a bad race that makes it feel like you're actually getting slower. Progress is not always linear, and in most cases, it happens in a manner that is more 2 steps forward, 1 step back than simply getting faster with each race. But one man in particular literally holds the record for being the exception to this rule, having set a whopping 13 marathon PRs in a row, a feat that hasn't been topped in 44 years and counting. Today is Wednesday, August 13th, 2025, and on this day in 1977, American runner Dick Beardsley ran his first marathon, commencing a PR streak that would last nearly 4 years. In this episode, we'll hear a bit about what led Beardsley to that first marathon 48 years ago today, and then sit down with Dick himself to talk about his world record and beyond. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. Okay, guys, I have a major announcement, and y'all are the very first to hear it. Ready? I am running the 2026 London Marathon. My first Abbott World Major was back in 2023 when I ran the Boston Marathon for Team Big Heart in honor of my daughter who underwent heart surgery to correct a congenital defect when she was 15 months old. When I finished that race, I decided that I would not enter the lottery for any of the world major marathons and instead earn all 6 or 7 or 9 or whatever it'll end up being by running for charity. Last year, I ran the Berlin and New York City marathons for Team for Kids, and this October, I will be running the Chicago Marathon for Team Tillman. That will make London in April my 5th star, and I will be running it as part of Team Keep a Child Alive. Keep a Child Alive is a nonprofit co-founded in 2003 by singer Alicia Keys that supports families in Africa and India affected by HIV and AIDS. And they do so much more than just distribute medicine. Keep a Child Alive provides homes, foods, mental health support, training for healthcare workers, and helps clinics in places like Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, and India. They are not only combating HIV, they're helping communities rebuild. I have committed to raising $5,000 for Team Keep a Child Alive, and I cannot reach that number without some help from the community. If you are able to support Keep a Child Alive and the work they do for children and families with HIV, you can donate directly through my London Marathon fundraising link, which I will put in the episode description. Literally any donation amount is very much appreciated, and 100% of donations go straight to the cause. Now let's talk about Dick Beardsley, who is one of my favorite humans in the running community. Dick was born in Minneapolis in 1956 and has spent nearly all of his 69 years living in the state of Minnesota. He started running in high school in the 70s and ran his first marathon exactly 48 years ago today, the Paavo Nurmi Marathon in Hurley, Wisconsin. That was the first of 13 consecutive marathon PRs that Beardsley ran, which earned him a spot in the Guinness Book of World Records. Some of Dick Beardsley's top accolades during his running career include intentionally tying for first place at the first ever London Marathon in 1981, winning Grandma's Marathon in both 81 and 82 with a course record that stood until 2014, and placing a close second to Alberto Salazar in the 1982 Boston Marathon following the famous Duel in the Sun. But why hear me talk about Beardsley's running career when we can hear it straight from him? So let's welcome Dick to Today in Running History. All right, I am here with Dick Beardsley. How are you today, Dick?
I'm doing just fine, Hillary. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Now, today we are going back 48 years to your first ever marathon. Before that, because, you didn't go from zero to marathon. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in running and how you got to that point?
Yeah, absolutely, Hillary. So, as a kid growing up here in Minnesota, my whole world revolved around hunting, fishing, trapping, the outdoors, and sports really wasn't part of my background at all until when I got into 11th grade. It was all of a sudden like girls started looking a lot better to me than like a dead raccoon laying alongside the road.
Imagine that.
And but believe it or not, I was so gosh dang shy. The thought of saying hi to a girl, let alone actually speaking to one, or heaven forbid, actually asking one out on a date, just I thought it ain't gonna happen. Well, so I noticed so that my buddies that were on the sports teams that were, they wear their high school letter jackets around and they always had girls hanging all over them. So I thought, that's it. I'll just go out for the football team and the girls will come to me. Well, thankfully, my football career lasted less than an hour. I got gang tackled the first day of practice. And I remember I got up out of this pile of guys and my helmet was on crooked, my shoulder pads were sticking out, my football pants are down to my ankles. And at that point, I'm thinking, there's not a girl alive that's worth going through this. So it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because a couple of days later, a buddy of mine said, well, Beard, you ought to go out for the cross country team. I had no idea what a cross country team was. He said, well, go up and down the hills through the woods. And I thought, well, gosh, that does sound like it might be kind of fun. So I showed up for my first day of practice. I was wearing a pair of like basketball shoes. I didn't know they made running shoes. I had black nylon stockings that went up to my knees, and I couldn't find a pair of my white gym shorts that we had to wear in gym class. But I found a pair of my dad's, but they were so big I had to take a black belt and cinch it around the waist so it would stay up. So needless to say, I got out of my truck that morning and everybody's like just shaking their head and laughing. So our coach says, all right, boys, line up out in front of the road out in front of the high school. We're doing the around the block run today. Now, I'd never run before, but I knew I was determined enough and stubborn enough to be able to go around the block. So, well, as it turned out, what they called their around the block run was actually 3.2 miles long. And I had to walk the last mile. By the time I got back to my high school, my coach and my teammates had already showered and gone home. But I remember when I crossed that imaginary finish line, I'm thinking, man, I don't know how far I just ran and walked, but I made it. And I'm thinking, man, I bet you if I, work hard at it and do what my coach tells me to do, I just bet you I can get good enough to earn a letter, make the varsity squad and earn a letter jacket. And and I was terrible though. I didn't make the varsity squad, and so I didn't get a letter jacket the first year. But I had already set a goal for myself when cross country season got over that fall, and that summer, between my junior and senior year, my what I was going to try to do was to run every single day that summer. And I did. I ran every single day. I didn't run real far or obviously fast, but I ran every single day. And I came back for my senior year of high school and we did that same around the block run our first day of practice. And this time, though, instead of all my teammates finishing in front of me, they all finished behind me. Now, that's not saying a whole lot because we didn't have a great team. We only had like 8 kids out or something. But it showed me that, man, if you're willing to do the work and put your nose to the grindstone, anything's possible.
That's so true. And that's true for anybody at any level. And I always love hearing stories stories like that, especially from people who have been at the top of the elite level. So
Well,
I love that.
and here's the thing, Hillary. So I got out of high school, and I did run track my senior year, but I never qualified for the Minnesota State high school meet in cross country or track. And then I went to a very small 2-year college in southern Minnesota, and they just happened to have a cross country and track team. And my coach down there, Coach John Fulkrod, who I'm still very close with, he's in his 80s now, and you know, he one day after practice, he'd sent all the other guys in and he was timing me doing extra quarter mile repeats. And we got done with that and we're walking back into the boys' locker room and he put his arm around my shoulder and he says to me, "You know, Dick, I really believe you can become as good a runner as you want to be." And Hillary, I never, ever forgot that. And there were moments, after college because I thought, well, I'm going to see how good of a runner I can become. It was a long shot. I mean, my dad was so mad at me. He said, "What do you mean you're going to see how good of a runner you can become?" And there were many times, I felt like throwing in the towel, but I kept thinking of what Coach Folkrod said, and I didn't want to be the age I'm now, almost 70, and look back and say, "Gosh darn it, why didn't I at least try when I had that opportunity when I was young and could do that kind of stuff?" And those words still ring into my ears all the time. What Coach Folkrod said.
That's great. And that's great that he believed in you. And I love that y'all have kept in touch all these years. That's pretty great as
Oh
well.
yeah, in fact, he's retired now, lives down in Florida. But him and my roommate from college, they're coming up at the end of September for a couple of days of fishing with us. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah,
That's
and
so great.
so when I was in college, I started to get better. It seemed like the further I ran in races, the better I was. So when I got to college, I could run 5K and up to 10 kilometers, in track. And then I decided it would have been the midsummer of 1977. I'd heard about this thing called the marathon, and I really hadn't prepared for it. I think my longest run was like a 10 miler, but I'm thinking, well, it's only like another 10 miles and then six more after that. And how
Runner
hard
math.
can that, you know, oh, when you're 21 years old, you can think you can run through a brick wall. So I decided to run my first marathon in August of 77. And it was the Paavo Nurmi Marathon in a little town called Hurley, Wisconsin. It's up in the northeastern corner of Wisconsin. You're almost into Upper Michigan, named after the famous Finnish runner Paavo Nurmi.
Yeah, of course.
And so I ran that, and I'll never forget this. I was so gosh dang excited, and I'm running with a guy that he's an adult. I'm just a squat in first year of college or second year of college, and I'm running and I'm just jabbing away, talking. And at about 5 miles, he turns to me. He says, "Dick," he goes, "you can keep on yapping, but I'm not going to answer you." He goes, "This marathon, the distance takes a lot out of it." And I felt terrible so I quit yapping to him, and I tell you the last 6 miles, I was hurting. Now you got to remember, the race is in like mid-August, and even up here in the northern part of the country, that's usually about the hottest time of the year. And it was hot, and some of the race route was on gravel roads. The horse flies and deer flies were terrible, and I finished, but I thought, I am never doing this again. I hurt in places I never thought a body could hurt. And I remember driving home. I was about 4 hours from where I lived, and I could hardly get out of my little pickup truck because I was so stiff and stuff. And I thought, nope, I'm not doing this again. And then I decided that fall, it's funny how you something bad happens to you, like you have a bad marathon or whatever, and you think, I'm never doing this again. And then, after a month or so, you recover and you think, well, maybe next time will be better. So I
That
ran the city.
amnesia, the runner's
Yeah,
amnesia.
exactly. So I ran the City of Lakes Marathon, which was a race in Minneapolis, St. Paul, that was a prelude to what the Twin Cities Marathon is today.
Okay.
And I ran that one, 2 months later or something, and I finished, but I swore I'm never doing this again. I mean, I hurt even worse than I did the second one, but somehow I kept going.
And at that point, so obviously your first marathon is always going to be a PR. And
Yep.
then with the second one, were you keeping track of your time? Did you go in trying to beat that time? Or
No.
was it
So Hillary, so my first marathon I ran 2 hours 47 minutes and some change, and of all those 13 consecutive marathons that I ran, that each one was faster than the other one. Honest to goodness, I I just went in to every race I ran. I went in there with the idea of to try to run as, the best I possibly could. And time was not even a consideration. I just wanted to try to, get better. But listen, I had no idea that I had run 13 consecutive marathons, and it was a record until my best friend Mike Dunlap. This is years ago. He goes, Beards. He goes, you're in the Guinness World Book of Records. I go, for what? He goes, you ran 13 consecutive marathons. I go, I did? Yeah, faster than the other ones. And seriously, I had no idea. I didn't go into it, because a person could probably do a lot more than that. If you said, I'm going in, I'm going to try to break 4 hours my first time, and then 3 hours and 45 minutes the second one. But I just went in there trying to do the very, very best I could. And then when I got to the point where I started running sub 2 hours and 20 minutes during that stretch, then time was out the window. I was going into these races. My goal was to try to win, is what it was. And yeah, the streak finally came to an end after I ran 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 36 seconds at the Grandma's Marathon in 1981. And it gets a little tougher to start PRing after that. I
Oh, I
guess
can
I did,
imagine.
but it wasn't consecutive.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so of those 13, what would you say is your favorite memory of those, and which one would you say was the worst?
Yeah. Okay. The worst would have been my second marathon. The first was bad, but the second one was, I mean, I passed out at the end and it was not pretty. Um, but my favorite one though was the last one when I ran 209.36 at Grandma's. And it wasn't and I'm a lot of people think, well, of course that's probably your favorite one because that's your fastest one, but that had nothing to do with it. It had nothing to do that I ran 209 that day or that I was fortunate to win, but it was what makes that race stand out for me so much is that it was the first time my mom and dad had ever seen me run a marathon. And Scott Keenan, who started the Grandma's Marathon in Duluth, Minnesota, he thought I might have a chance to, place right up there. So he allowed my mom and dad to be on the inside of the finish chute. So when I come across that finish line, and now at this point, with 4 miles to go, my little watch I was wearing, the battery went dead. So, and back then there were no pace cards with clocks on them. So I had no idea how fast I was running. And I come around the last corner and people are going nuts. They're going, you're going to break 2:10. And I'm thinking, are they crazy? Well, I come across that finish line and honest to gosh, I'm jumping. I get choked up talking about this. I'm jumping up and down like a kid that got a brand new train set for Christmas. And my mom and dad were right there. And my dad, who had an eighth grade education, never had a chance to partake in sports. And he was the kind of guy you could hit over the head with a 2x4 and he wouldn't cry. Gosh, my dad runs up to me, gives me this big hug, and my mom does, and they're both crying. And pretty soon I'm crying. And I'm not kidding you. I was the only boy in the family. I've got two younger sisters, but and my dad and I were close. But if I was with my dad somewhere for the next 3 months, he would go up to perfect strangers and go, "Hey, you know who this is? It's my kid. He set the record at the Grandma's Marathon." I'm going, "Dad, knock it off." So that's why that race will always be the most special race I'd ever run.
That's amazing. Was that the first or the second time you won at Grandma's?
That was the first time, and then I came back again the following year when it was 2 months after Boston when I ran 208 there, and everybody thought I was going to set a world record at Grandma's after Boston. I mean, everybody except me. I wasn't one that ran for times, and even Scott Keenan, the race director, he called me up about 5 weeks before and said, "Hey, I'm bringing in the most sophisticated timer in the country, and we're going to have three clocks, one with the running time, one with your predicted finish time, and another clock with your average pace per mile." And he brought in a guy named Dave Babaraki. At the time, Dave was from California and was the 25-kilometer US record holder. And he says, I'm paying him big bucks. Of course, this is all under the table back then, to take you out at world record pace for the first 15 miles. And at that point, it's like, what choice do I have, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a windy day, and the the pace setter, after 7 or 8 miles, we were running into a headwind the whole way. He tucked in behind me so I could block the wind for him. And
Wow.
about a mile later, he dropped out, and I was on 206 pace for the first 7 or 8 miles, and then when he dropped out, every step I took, I'm looking at the predicted finish time. It kept getting slower and slower, and I was fortunate to win. I ran like 2:14, I think, that day.
That's so funny. That's pretty much my experience at grandma's, except like more than 2 hours slower than that.
That's all right.
But it was so hot when I was there.
Yeah.
I was watching the same thing on the app, just my predicted pace just go down
Well,
further and further.
yeah, and Hillary, this year's Grandma's Marathon, I mean, the humidity was so high too, and it was sultry. It was like it is in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Here
Oh yeah.
you come to Duluth, Minnesota, and on most of the time you'll get this nice little breeze coming off, Lake Superior. I mean, if the race would have been run the couple of days and the day before the marathon, oh, you would have been shivering because it would have been in the
Yeah.
40s, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's part of what makes it, it's unpredictable
It
and
is.
gotta be prepared for everything.
Well, that's the thing, you can do everything training wise, physically and mentally, but we have no control over the weather. And so you just got to deal with it the best you can.
Absolutely, and that's such a big part of big part of the sport in general. Now, that first race that you did after Grandma's in 81, where you did not PR, what did that stand out at the time as a disappointment, or did you even notice that it wasn't a PR?
No, it was, I believe I remember right. It was the Stockholm Marathon in Stockholm, Sweden. And me and Bill Rogers were the two Americans that got invited over there. And, Bill's one of my best buddies that I used to compete against. But at the time, I was like a starstruck puppy, get to fly over with him on the plane, and I learned a valuable lesson that day. So Bill and I were in the lead pack, and there was about 15 guys in this lead group, and at about 15 kilometers still, into the race. And we're going up this long grade on this bridge. And I thought there's just too many people, in this group. So I threw in a hard surge, and I opened about a 200-meter gap. And I looked back, and I could see the only one that started coming up towards me was Bill. So I kind of backed off a little bit, and I thought, okay, catch your breath. And when Bill catches up with you, just put the hammer down on him. So Bill is just coming up to me, and he's panting like a dog. He goes, Dickie, I think we broke those guys. Maybe we ought to back it off just a little bit. And I'm thinking, man, Bill Rogers wants to run with me. I go, okay, Bill. Well, Hillary, that was a kind of even though I wasn't a beginner, it was a beginner's mistake against the king of the roads back then, Bill Rogers, because at about 30K into the race, I hit a little bit of a bad spot, and Bill noticed that. He puts in a hard surge. Bill wins the race. I finish second. and I didn't PR that day.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I had no idea about this whole record, and that I'd had 13 consecutive ones in a row. And I tell you, when I look back, the one where it came the closest to ending before that was the 1981 Houston Marathon. So I ran Houston in January of 1981. Yes, in 81. And then like 3 weeks later, I got invited to run the Beppu International Marathon in Beppu, Japan. And so I finished second to Bill at Houston in 1981 in 2 hours and, let's see, 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 48 seconds. And I went over to Beppu then 3 weeks later, and I finished third to these two Soul brothers, SOH, who were world class Japanese runners at the time, and I ran 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 41 seconds. So I
Wow.
got under it by 7 seconds. But again, it wasn't something like
Yeah.
I was trying to do that. It just happened to happen.
Yeah. Oh wow, that is close. That's so funny. And so when you found out that you had set this record, it was already in the books.
Yes.
Nobody came to you and told you about any of this. When was this that you found out? You said that your friend was the one that had let you know.
Well, my friend's an avid, loves going to like bookstores and stuff. And he was at a bookstore and he saw a book there, the Guinness World Record of Sports. So he picked it up and starts going through it. And there's a whole 2-page thing on with a big picture of me and then the 13 consecutive times. And he sent it to me. And I thought, I thought somebody was making this all up and everything. But as far as I know, it still stands, to this day. And so I think I got that. I've got the book somewhere. It's probably in a box up in the attic somewhere. But yeah, that was pretty cool, I guess.
No, that's pretty amazing. I made it 4 marathons before
Nice.
4 in a row before I didn't PR. So
That's good.
and I was happy with that. And then I haven't,
Yeah.
yeah, then I'll take a 7-second PR. I'll take
Right.
it.
Well,
Any of it counts.
like you said, you on your first marathon, you automatically PR, and some people, if they run another one, may never ever run that fast again. So
Yeah.
the fact that you got 4 in a row, that's darn good.
Yeah, I'm hoping to PR here in Chicago in a little bit. I will take 7 seconds. I will take
Yes.
7 minutes. I whatever I can get.
Exactly.
But that's great. Now, so they didn't give you like a certificate or anything like that? Oh, that's
No,
crazy.
not that I recall. They might have sent something to me in the mail, but I don't recall that they did. But like I said, my best friend Mike Dunlap sent me the book, and that's good enough for me, I guess.
That's so funny. And how does that compare looking now at nearly 5 decades in the running world? How does that world record compare with everything else?
You mean in my life, or just what's happening in running today, or?
All of it. Just
Yeah.
as far as I mean, you have quite a few accolades on your running resume. And how does that compare to, the win at London, the
Yeah.
two wins at Grandma's and
Well,
everything like that?
yeah, it's pretty, you know, I would guess it's pretty far down the list, to be honest with you. Um, you know, I mean, they Guinness World Book of Records, they're fun to go and hear about them, but you know, they they have world records for, how many cupcakes can you eat in 15 minutes? It's
That's the one
something
I'm
like,
gonna go after.
right. So in that category, it's kind of a fun thing to have and whatnot. But the Grandma's marathon win, fortunate to co-win the first London Marathon back in 1981, and even in some of the smaller races, you know, that you run in the little towns around Minnesota that have little festivals during the summer. I can still remember I won the Long Lake Corn Days 4 miler, and that was a big deal for me back. That was way back when. So
I love that.
those
The corn days. That's great.
right. They all are up there a little above the Guinness World Book of Record. But like I said, it's kind of a neat deal to have something like that, and I make more fun of it than I do like look what I did kind of a thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's sure. And there's obviously quite a lot for it to compare to. So that's not super surprising that would not be the the top of the list.
right,
Now, I have followed you for quite a while. You and I met at the Oklahoma City
yeah,
Memorial Expo a few years ago. But for people who are not familiar with you, can you tell everybody what your current relationship looks like with running?
yeah. So I still run every day. But if like I tell people, if I ran any slower, I'd be going backwards, and that is the honest to God's truth. for the last 2 years, I've suffered from a terrible infection in my left artificial knee, and I've had to I've had 20 some surgeries in the last 2 years on it. And in fact, I'm going to the Mayo Clinic coming up here in about a week and a half because it's I got a new knee in there, but it clunks so bad that I limp real bad when I walk. It doesn't hurt, but I limp bad. But I go out every day for 4 miles before I take people out fishing. But Hillary, I'm not making this up. If I run between 15 to 16-minute miles, I can't run any faster because of my leg. I like I said, I just kind of limp a little bit. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I told my wife Jill, if I get to the point where I can't run anymore, as long as I can go out and walk 4 miles every day and still keep upright and keep putting one foot in front of the other, I'm okay with that. And like now, I go, on a good day, I'll run right around 15 minutes per mile, and I'm tickled. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm flying today. That's what I think in my head. If you would have told me 50 years ago that, what would you think if you're running 15-minute miles? I would have thought, well, I'm going back to bed. Why even put my shoes on? So that's where I'm at with my running now. I haven't run a full marathon since 2008. Because in January 2009, I had my first knee replaced. That was my right one. That's still in. It's been in 17 years now. And so no, running took me so much further than I ever thought it would. And the fact that I can still get out there and do it. And I still, I get up, I get up at 2:45 in the morning so I can get my run in before I take people out fishing.
2:45? What?
I know. I've always been an early riser, and but I tell you, I look forward when I go to bed at night to get up in the morning, and you should see what I get to see when everybody else is sleeping. Like in the wintertime, we have these unbelievable northern lights up here in Bemidji, Minnesota, and I just stop and it'll be 20 below zero, and I'm out running. I stop, and it's like watching these natural fireworks. And now, in the summertime, early in the, I mean, it's still dark when I go out, but Lake Bemidji is right behind me here. And you can hear the loons. That's the official Minnesota state bird. They're one of the most beautiful birds. And the call that they make, I get to hear that when everybody else is sleeping. And I'm thinking, man, I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world to be out here doing this right now.
I love that. And none of that, it changes if you're running 5-minute miles or 15-minute
Right.
miles. So that's
Right.
a great perspective, and good for any of us to remember. I'm at probably the fastest that I will get, and I'm nowhere near a 5-minute mile. So it's always a good reminder for any of us that just getting out there and being able to enjoy a run no matter what the pace is a privilege, and it's
It
a
is. We never want to take it for granted because it can be taken away from you pretty darn quick.
absolutely. Well, last question. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but what do you have coming up as far as the running world goes? I know that you're also you're a fishing guide, so what's coming up in the next few months?
Yeah. So the biggest thing coming up. So in a town where I'm from, not too far from where I live now in Bemidji, a town called Detroit Lakes. It's a little smaller than Bemidji. So 30 years ago, a couple of my buddies, we got together and they decided we should put on a half marathon to promote the tourism season after the summer season. So so we decided let's put one on a week after Labor Day because the leaves are starting to change up here now and then. And so they said, Beards, we need to come up with a name. So I'm coming up with all these different names. And they looked at each other and they said, well, Beards, you think we could name it the Dick Beardsley Half Marathon? And I said, well, I guess if you think that'll help a little bit. Well, none of us ever thought that race would last more than a couple of years. And the first year, I think we had 100 runners. And coming up on September 6th this year, the Saturday after Labor Day, will be the 30th anniversary of the Dick Beardsley,
Wow.
half marathon, and we'll have a couple thousand runners there. And the 5K is, I lost my son Andy. It'll be 10 years ago in October. So the 5K was renamed the Andy Beardsley Memorial 5K.
Oh, I love
So
that.
yeah, so that's the biggest thing I got coming up this fall. And other than that, I don't really have a whole lot of plans. I used to, in the fall, they used to bring me and Bill Rogers and Frank Schroeder and Joni Benoit and some other runners from back then to these expos and stuff, but they don't do that much anymore. And the reason I've gotten from more than one race director is that, well, this young generation of runners out, they have no idea who you people even are, and which is kind of a sad deal. Not that they don't know who they are, but it kind of takes away, or they don't get to learn the history of what it was like running 50, 60 years ago.
And that's what this podcast is for. So
right.
Hopefully.
Absolutely, Hillary. Good for you. I mean, you'll keep our names out there a little bit anyhow.
Yeah. So hopefully some people are learning some things about the history, because this has been going on so much longer than any of us have been running. I've been running the last 26 years, which feels like a long time, but there was so much more before that. And so hopefully that's what comes of all this.
Hats off to you for doing it. What a great idea for your podcast. And I'm excited that you let me be on there with you today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great time at the Dick Beardsley Half Marathon. And would love to have you back in the spring to talk about London and about Boston and all that.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks so much, Dick.
Hillary.
Such a great guy, and I highly recommend y'all check out his book, Staying the Course, and his podcast, On the Run with Beards and Done with Mike Dunlap. I will put a link in the episode description to both, as well as a link to sign up for the upcoming Dick Beardsley Half Marathon on September 6th in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And I will definitely be inviting Dick back in the spring so we can talk about the inaugural London Marathon right before I hop across the pond to run that same race. That is all I have for y'all today. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you again to Dick Beardsley for the conversation. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and then send to someone you'd love to share a scone and spot of tea with in London. Again, I am running the London Marathon for Team Keep a Child Alive in April, and would appreciate any donation that you are able to give through the link in the episode description. Join me tomorrow as we hop to a much more recent event in history and hear about the single fastest 5,000-meter race ever run. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Beating that time... Beating that time during your Thord. Okay. But one man in particular... But one man in particular literally holds the record for being the exception to this rule, having set a whopping 13 marathon PRs in a row, a feat that hasn't been topped in 34 years and counting. Today is Wednesday, August 13th, 2025, and on the 34 years, where did I get that? Years. This was 48 years ago. Well, okay. 44 years, because that was when it was okay. Jesus. This sentence is really hurting me. Okay. All right, and then here's the interview. Hey, Dick. Oh, hey, Hillary. Here's an interview. Yeah, I ran a lot of marathons. I was really fast. Oh, cool. All right. There we go. And I will definitely be inviting Dick back in the spring so we can talk about the inaugural London Marathon. Okay. And then send to someone you'd love to share a scone and a spot of tea with in London. Oh God, that was bad. Okay. A spot of tea. Oh my God. I don't lose listeners. All right, let's start that over again. I'm not gonna do the accent. That was bad. Okay. Please make sure to like. No, I'll just start at this is all I have for you today. I'm making it so hard. Okay.